Before we close out what has certainly been a busy week in politics, we wanted to rewind a little bit and take you back to Tuesday night. President Obama delivering his final State of the Union address, which provided an opportunity for us to catch up with a number of lawmakers from across the RNN region. Now, we didn't have a chance to share all of those interviews with you, and Andrew, as you said, was on the ground in D.C. Take us through some of the highlights.
Well, Rich, we caught up with Connecticut Governor Dannel Malloy, and that was a bit of a surprise because governors aren't really supposed to be invited to the State of the Union. But the governor came at the invitation of First Lady Michelle Obama. We began the conversation with me asking him why he got that invitation as we spoke before the address. Governor Dannel Malloy, a little surprised to find you here in Washington for State of the Union. What brings you here this year?
Well, the First Lady invited me to sit in her box as one of the invited guests. The President wanted to highlight people and states that have made substantial progress during the first 7 years of his presidency. I'm very proud to be the governor of the state that was first declared to have ended chronic homelessness amongst veterans, first in the nation. We've had groundbreaking criminal justice reform, groundbreaking gun reform, created 80,000 jobs in the last few years, 26,000 jobs this year, invested in 17,885 units of housing. That's in a state that didn't have a housing department before I became governor. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and it's nice that they invited me.
You are a progressive governing the state. You can look at Washington, some criticism of President Obama, New York City, criticism of Mayor de Blasio there. Is there a sense, and is it a false one, that progressives don't govern well? And how can you sort of challenge that?
I think it's always easier to be negative. That's why every candidate on the Republican side running for president has a negative message, not a positive message. It's a lot easier to sell that negativity and to cut into it for political gain. But actually to tell the whole story, America's a great country. We can solve our problems. We're making progress. This president's created 14 million jobs during his presidency, or the nation has done that. That's twice the number of jobs that George Bush created in the 8 years that he was president of the United States. So there are a lot of good things happening. Ending homelessness amongst veterans, very, very important. We owe these people an obligation. And then, quite frankly, making America safer. 400,000 people have died as a result of gun usage since 9/11. 3,800 have died as a result of terrorism. Our own violence upon ourselves and upon our neighbors are a bigger challenge to us than anything else. Let's get it right. Let's have universal background checks.
Governor Dannel Malloy, Democrat of Connecticut, thank you for a few minutes.
Thank you.
And next up, we talked presidential politics and the state of the Republican Party with the always outspoken Peter King, Republican congressman from Long Island. Congressman King, so much focus this year on the presidential election and the elections in November. You were considering a run briefly at one point. What's your thoughts on where the primary race is so far on the Republican side and what that says for where your party is right now?
Well, so far, everyone has been proven wrong. Every expert has been proven wrong. I don't think anybody thought Donald Trump would have such a commanding lead, which he really does. I think it shows that people are angry. People are fed up with what they see as politics as usual. And when people say they agree with what Donald Trump is saying, I don't know if they do or not. I think what they really agree with the way he says it, the way he's not willing to just bow down and give in to political correctness. I think it's our job as Republicans is to take the best of what Trump is doing, but to put a more rational basis around it.
There has been some talk that if Donald Trump or Ted Cruz is the standard bearer for your party, that could potentially be harmful for down-ticket races, particularly with the Senate in play. Are you concerned about that yourself?
I'd be more concerned about Ted Cruz than I am about Donald Trump.
Why?
I've seen Ted Cruz in action. To me, he's a very destructive force. He's the one who brought about the government shutdown with no solution in sight at all. It was just, to me, really a lack of responsibility on his part. And the fact that nobody wants to work with Ted Cruz indicates he just is a guy that can't be trusted. If I was Donald Trump is Donald Trump. You agree with some what he says, disagree with others. The fact is, I don't see the malice in Donald Trump. I do see a darkness of spirit in Ted Cruz.
You had mentioned your concern over foreign policy issues, the rise of ISIS, homeland security issues as well. Normally, if there's a presidential election with a foreign policy focus, that tends to help Republicans, tends to hurt Democrats, though there isn't a lot of experience with foreign policy in the Republican field this go-round. There is on the Democratic side. Is there any chance that a foreign policy focus hurts Republicans this go-round?
I think if the Republicans are going to get the advantage from foreign policy, they'd have to nominate someone like Marco Rubio, who does understand foreign policy. If it's Ted Cruz, he has no real experience in foreign policy. Donald Trump has a lot of ideas about foreign policy. I don't know how many people you can bomb into submission, though.
You get the feeling Peter King doesn't like Ted Cruz.
My God, darkness is spirit.
One other note, we have the full version of all of these interviews available on the RFL Facebook page or the FiOS 1 Facebook page, depending on what region it is, and that's your congressperson.
You are starting to hear people, Andrew, Republicans. Chris Shays last night was with us saying pretty much the same thing. Talk about feeling like you're between a lesser of two evils, where you'll hold your nose and you'll say Trump. It's gotten to that point.
You know, I had forgotten how much House Republicans
darkness of spirit
hate Ted Cruz. I mean, except for the Freedom Caucus, the Republicans in the House hate Ted Cruz. They think he's been meddling in their business. He caused the shutdown. He's a boogeyman. This could get very entertaining over the next couple of months.
To say the least, Andrew. Thank you. And one of the issues, obviously, the military and funding for it in the next election. The Pentagon has made a lot of cuts, but it's still the biggest and strongest military on earth without debate. But some current and former Army and Navy guys, they're concerned that the cuts we're looking at are going too far and it's making us less safe. Up next, we'll speak to one of them who's sounding the alarm.